All right, I think we're having a entropy struggle going on, but hey guys, welcome again to another exciting edition of Victory Never Sleeps. With me tonight, I've got a good friend of mine and spectacular Gothi, Trent East. Welcome, Trent.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on and spending a few hours with us. To start with, could you give folks a little bit of background on yourself, how you came to Alsatru, and how you came to the Asatru Folk Assembly?
Sure. So I'm 25 years old. I've been practicing Asatru since my senior year of high school, right after I turned 18. So it would have been Ostara 2015. That's when I started practicing. I found Asatru because of the AFA. A good friend of mine who's still an AFA member in good standing. He went to Ostara in the South 2015 and came back to school and told me about it. So instead of doing our math work in class like we should have been doing, probably, we just talked about Asatru. And something really interesting about that conversation is that I've been like one of those militant atheist types up to that point. But hearing about Stephen McNallen's Odin bloat, it was like a flip or a switch was flipped. And I had to learn everything I could about Asatru right then and there. And I just haven't looked back. I joined the AFA about 2 months later after kind of checking it out. And yeah, that's about it. The rest is history.
Well, I'm glad all that happened, and I would argue that Alsatru has probably served you better than high school math.
A little bit.
Math teachers out there, I apologize. Well, excellent. So we got a question already from Sarah. Sarah asks, that was kind of the question already asked. She asked what your journey to the AFA was like. And just to refresh everybody, how long ago was that?
7.5 years ago. So started in March of 2015 when I was 18 years old.
All right. So that dates you a little bit there. To my knowledge, you are the youngest Gothi that we've ever had in the Asatru Folk Assembly. I think that, sure, that may cut both ways, but I think that affords you a unique perspective. How have you, I don't know, how has that affected your time being a Gothi so far?
It hasn't affected it too negatively, I don't think. I mean, I'm sure there are people when they need like counseling for something, they think, well, I'm not going to go to the kid. I'm going to go to Gothi Stam or Gothi Young, you know. But other than that, I don't think it's really had much of an effect other than like, you know, just comments about my age occasionally.
Good deal. Well, so folks, make sure you're getting your questions in here. We're trying to figure out a few entropy glitches, but for folks that do want to join us over on Entropy, Nick can throw you the link up there, and it's a really nice way to throw some tips at us if you'd like to. All those donations go to the Asatru Folk Assembly. And if you donate enough and you want to, they're certainly all tax deductible as well. Also, we've got Super Chat. It's real easy for our questions section to get overloaded with questions because you guys have so many amazing questions for us, and we all appreciate it. If you want to move yours to the front of the line, we do have a Super Chat function over on Entropy as well. You know, we appreciate any and all donations you guys do, but please realize, you know, we're very happy to answer any and all of your questions. And as long as you stay on with us tonight, we will definitely, even if you don't stay on with us, we'll answer your question. Whether you hear it or not, I suppose is up to you, but we will get to all the questions before we leave you. Couple of more things. I guess off the top, so I don't forget about doing it, I'd like to invite all of you guys to come out next month for Winter Nights. It's going to be in Ohio, and Nick can throw up a link for that, for the dates and such. But it's going to be really nice. It's going to be our first time at a new event venue. We're really looking forward to it. Traditionally, Winter Nights has gone on in Eastern Pennsylvania. And so we're moving a state over this year and probably going to get a lot of folks that haven't been there before. Hopefully we'll get to see a lot of our Winter Nights regulars as well. And that's always a special event. It's a cool time of year. It's a neat part of the country. I'd love to see you guys there. Also, while we're on the subject, the following month in Oklahoma, the AFA will be celebrating Feast of the Einherjar. I'll be out at that. I know the McNallans plan to be out at that as well. If you guys would like to join us there, you're welcome, and we'd love to have you guys. Cool. And with that, I agree asks, does the AFA have any scope in the future to look into possibly teaching the esoteric side of Asatru, or are we concentrating on the exoteric for now? So that's an interesting question when you ask that. Yeah, we certainly have a scope to do some of that. I'd be curious the best way to implement that, though. It's a conversation that we often have internally. But it's one of those conversations we have with people with the requisite experience. One thing when you look at our faith in a holistic way, it's meant to be a faith for all of our people. And certainly in the days where that was the case, most folks were farmers and they wanted to come to the Hofs and participate in the sacrifice and the feast and, make prayers and offerings to their gods. And the more specific magical practices and more esoteric elements weren't really something that everybody was involved in. It was something for kind of an initiated group of people that took that special interest. And so when we're just talking to the random member or person interested in Asatru, talking about the fundamentals, the values, and the worship of our gods is much more of an immediate thing for us to discuss than the finer points of esoterics or rune work or say their practice or things that way. But it is a discussion that if you have questions on that, we're very happy to talk to you about that individually. It's kind of something that up to this point is a word of mouth thing from our Gothar to those members that are specifically interested. But I hope that helps, and it is something we'll give some thought to. Sarah asks, you were oathed, this is for you, Trent, that you were oathed as a Gothi with two of your closest friends. What was that like?
It was just really fitting. It felt right. It was, the three of us were the last in our class to be oathed. I like to think it was just because we didn't make it out to midsummer, or it may just because it took us the longest to get where we needed to be to earn that. I don't know. But it just felt really fitting because the whole time we were kind of going through that together. We were always critiquing each other's work and hyping each other up for things and having each other's backs the whole time. So, yeah, to go through that with my two best friends it was a really memorable event, and I wouldn't have had it any other way.
Well, that's great. I've had each of the two gentlemen in question on this show in weeks previous. You guys individually are all outstanding Gothar, and your guys' ability to synergize and work together has been a real asset to the AFA. So we really appreciate that. Tim asks, Gothi Trent, what's your favorite tea and why is it Irish breakfast?
It is not Irish breakfast, but it's Twining's English breakfast.
That is incorrect. Irish breakfast is much more delicious than English breakfast, though they are both good.
Yeah, whatever.
Despite the grumbles, I would also recommend Sweet and Spicy by Good Earth Tea. The sweet and spicy orange spice is excellent, as are many of their other delicious flavors. You should. You all should. I would highly encourage it. The King of Cheese asks, anyway, a question for both of you. For folk unawares, could you explain what Aryan means and how it's used in our lexicon as Asatru? Trent, go ahead and take that first.
Okay. So the Aryans, in the, I guess, strictest, most mundane material sense of the word, were our Proto-Indo-European ancestors. that came over the steppes around the was it the Pontic-Caspian steppe, kind of near Ukraine. They came westward, expanding and conquering and creating all of Western civilization. As far as how it relates to Asatru, I would just say, we're an ethnic faith. Our ethnicity is Aryan, in the same way that, English people would call themselves Anglo-Saxons, or the Irish would call themselves Celts. It's a broad thing, sort of, but it's true. Whether people, see that as a bad word or not is irrelevant. It's our ancestors and it's us.
So the word Aryan has gone out of favor in recent years, but it's an ancient word. A lot of people have different 20th century associations with it, but it's a very ancient word that's preserved in Sanskrit, and it means noble, the noble people, and it implies a shining nobility or a shining example of nobility. It's a self-identifier that we see ourselves as noble people. Not only is it that we identify ourselves that way, but that's a standard we hold ourselves to. And that's why I think it's particularly valuable. For point of information, both Ireland and Iran, both in their relative languages, mean the land of the Aryans. So those are kind of the two distant fringes of where the Aryan migrations ended up before the New World. So that's why we use it. That's why it's important. As Trent says, it identifies us as a distinct people, and it identifies us in a positive way, in a way, something for us to aspire to and to be worthy of. And so that's why it's something that we certainly don't shy away from using. Robert asks, is a Hof in Europe a possibility? Certainly it is. A Hof in Europe I would love to see. It's something that we talked about early on, but what we really need to see to get a Hof somewhere is a very active membership that can maintain it and upkeep it, but also committed leadership that's consistent and that's putting in the effort on that. So far, a lot of our international membership has been either too few in number in a location to justify a Hof, and we were getting very close to the idea of having a Hof in Sweden, but with the global reactions to COVID-19 and such, the enthusiasm for international membership has really decreased from the height that it was at. Now, we have members in 14 different countries around the world, so it's absolutely a possibility, and it's a dream of ours. I would love to have a Hof in Sweden. We've talked about, and we've at different times had a very active membership in Australia and New Zealand. So it is something that I'd love to see one day, but I don't think it's going to be one of our next couple. Katla asks, what's your favorite type of pie and why is it pumpkin? Trent, go for it.
That's cool that you guessed that, and you guessed correctly. Why is it pumpkin? I don't know. It's just the best, and that's an objective fact, and anybody that disagrees is just wrong, I guess. That's the fairest answer I can give you.
So Gothi East is asking to get booted from the program. I apologize, guys. The best pie is clearly cherry pie, and it's magnificent. Madison asks, Trent, could you explain to us what words are wind, style is iron means?
Caught me off guard there. At Thorshof, we've developed a culture of dressing nicely, and Thorshof's motto, which was adapted from the Iron Guard Kindred's motto, words are wind, deeds are iron. I think I originally had said it to Daniel while he was trying to pick out a tweed suit for Ostara a year or two ago. So it's a meme more than anything else.
I got to say, I'm impressed with y'all wearing tweed in North Carolina. It's a little bit warm for tweed, I have found. So it's impressive that you gentlemen can wear a three-piece tweed in that environment. To get to a little bit more of a serious subject, Josh asks, Gothi Trent, how you been working with the folk futhark and what do you like about it? And then he asks, Alsherjargothi, any thoughts on the folk futhark yourself? Go for it, Trent.
Okay. So Swan mentioned it to me kind of offhand a couple years ago, and I've been bugging him about it to finish it ever since because I thought it was a really neat idea. What I like about it is that it takes runes from all four of the, main futharks, I guess, Elder, Younger, Anglo-Frisian, and Armanen, and it creates sort of a pan-Aryan rune row for us to use. Whereas with the Elder Futhark, it's Proto-Germanic, and the Younger Futhark is Icelandic, I think. Anglo-Frisian Futhark, of course, is it's like English, Dutch, and the Armanen Futhark was given to us by Meister Guido von List. So the Folk Futhark brings all those together, makes it into one pan-Aryan rune row for all of us. And it's something that's going to be specific to the AFA. You're not going to see any of our detractors using that. So that's what I like about it.
So, my thoughts are a couple on it. First, there's no pretension that, we're adding some extra layer of esotericism to it. It's really, like Trent said, it's the brainchild of Whit and Swan. And it's really an homage to our futharkic heritage, if you will. It's something that, the best way to put it, linguistically, certainly other futharks were adapted to the linguistics of the area. As Trent said, the Elder was Proto-Germanic. The Younger futhark is much more Viking-aged Norse. The Anglo-Saxon futhark is, good for Anglo-Saxon words and even, probably your best bet to translate English into. But we find ourselves in the United States as a mixture of all of the European peoples who've come here. And so to kind of celebrate that and the things that bond us together, the Folk Futhark was created as an homage to all those that rich runic heritage that we have. We picked the stave or the symbol of each of those Futhark runes that we found most fitting, and that's kind of what we like to use in some of our AFA signage and artwork and things of that nature. But it's not really any diversion. It's an evolution of using those runes. And it's one of those things that we also like to use because we're not trapped in an ancient era. Asatru is a living faith that lives and exists with our people in the times that we are in and in the times that we'll be in the future. So it's kind of a neat and a special AFA thing we like to do. Heather asks, Trent, I would love to know your favorite ice cream flavor.
Not to just go with the crowd, but I remember this question last week, and I have to agree, it's mint chocolate chip. That's another one of those things where that's just a fact, and anybody else can kick rocks.
That is a fact. That is truth. We endorse that on this program. The King of Cheese asks another question. How are you two lads doing today? Trent, how are you doing?
Doing all right.
I'm doing pretty good myself. It's always fun. I look forward to these every week. I love talking with you all. I like getting your guys' questions. I like this kind of direct interaction with people. We've got folks that join this from all around the world, and you guys are amazing, and I love talking to you. And I get to spend a couple hours talking with very good friends of mine about something that's my whole life that I love with all my heart. So it's anytime I get to do this, I'm having a good day. That's for sure. James asks, Gothi Trent, isn't the importance men's mental health something that's important to you?
Yes. I mean, it should be important to all of us, Gothar, folk builder, Witten, whatever level you're at. That should be something that's important to you. Obviously, men are half of our folk, and men's mental health is something that's not really looked at nowadays. Not if you're not if you're a straight white guy. Any deviation from that in your mental health will be considered important. But yeah, it's just one of those things that's not really talked about, but it should be. And I mean, it's important to me in that regard. And when I do counseling, it's usually with men and they're going through this stuff that they feel like they can't talk to anybody about. And a lot of times sometimes it's some pretty mundane stuff that they should be able to open up to friends about, but they feel they can't because our society, with how it is right now, it just doesn't allow for that, I guess.
Yeah, I think men's mental health is probably at an all-time low, certainly when we talk about heterosexual white men's mental health. Steve McNallen, our founder, has always talked about how our people are experiencing a soul sickness. And I think we see that a lot, especially in our young men. Society is trying as best as they can to displace young heterosexual white men and to confuse them and to demonize the natural inclinations of their heart and their spirit. And it's very difficult these days. I would encourage any of our men, young or old, who are having mental health issues and need somebody to talk to reach out to our Gothar. It's something we take very seriously in the AFA. And I know, especially being men, strength is really important. And sometimes it's difficult to talk to somebody about a weakness that you're experiencing. But truth is definitely one of our noble virtues. And it's better to be honest and to seek some help and some counsel than to pretend that everything's okay and have problems go untreated or uncared for, and things spiral out of control. So I would encourage you guys, please speak to one of our Gothar. We care about you guys. We love you guys. And we would love to help all of our men and our ladies be as successful in life as they can be. Sarah asks, Gothi Trent, what do you see as your role as a Gothi as? Servant of the people or advocate between the gods and the folk?
Yes. Yeah, both of those. I mean, so I think this was mentioned last week on Gothi Young's episode, but the old Latin word for a Roman priest, pre-Christian, was pontifex, and it meant bridge. And that's something that, as Gothar, we talk about a lot with rituals, that we build the bridge between folk and gods. And so that is something that's important to me, and that's something that I actually visualize specifically when I do bloat. And then, of course, there's the more mundane side of being a Gothi, like the counseling and just as important stuff, of course, but just being here to help people when I can. So they're equally important to me, and those are both things. And I try and be a role model too, as best I can, because I've had the AFA my whole adult life, and I've had awesome guys like Mark McLeod and Cliff Erickson and Alsherjargothi here to look up to and to kind of help me walk in the right footsteps in life. So I'm trying to sort of pay that forward.
Yeah, to throw on there, there's so many hats that our Gothar wear, and they synergize really well with one another. I think that the idea of serving the people could be misleading depending on what people are used to hearing, if they're used to hearing that in a Christian context. I think we need to take care and tend our people and care for our people, absolutely 100%. But I also think that the goal isn't just to serve our folk. The goal is to lead our folk as well. And I think our Gothar do a very good job of that. But also that bridge between our gods and our folk is so important. And we're living in a day and age where that bridge is literally being rebuilt. And it's pioneering work that our Gothar are doing to reforge that connection between our folk and our gods, and between our gods and our folk. So that's an essential job function of being a Gothi. Our Gothar are asked to shoulder a lot of responsibility, and they do amazing work. And so much of it, like Trent mentioned, is counseling and things behind the scenes that you guys may never see, because there's a lot of confidentiality involved. But the work that's put in is tremendous, and we all appreciate it very much. Got a couple of tips over here on the side. Ruben gave us $10. Thank you so much, Ruben. Good evening, folks. To both gentlemen, if you could have a drink and a chat with one of our gods or goddesses, who would you choose and why? Trent, you first.
I think I would want to have a drink with Tyr, actually. I'd like to hear his thoughts on why he did what he did, putting his hand in Fenrir's mouth. I mean, we all know the answer, but I think it'd be really interesting to hear him put it into words.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and these kind of navel gazing questions are stuff that I overthink a lot. I think, as this is cheating because I'm going to give you two. I think it would be exciting to have a drink and talk with and hear stories from Thor. I think that would be amazing. I also think it would be very, very interesting to sit and listen to the Allfather and hear whatever Odin would want to tell me. I think it might be less of a fun experience, but I think it'd be extremely profound. And I'd be ecstatic to be able to sit and to speak with or drink with any of our gods and goddesses. And, hopefully one day through some form of ascension, that can be closer to being my reality. Sunshine Sucks gives us $10. Thank you. I appreciate that. You are a loyal follower of this program, and we really do appreciate you. I think you're here for every one of these we've done. Daniel Young asks, Gothi East, what inspired you to ascend to the clergy class, and who inspires you?
I wish I could give a better answer than this, but I don't really remember a specific moment where I was like, aha, I want to be a Gothi. My initial plan for leadership, in fact, was just to be a folk builder. And I didn't think I'd ever want to do something like lead bloat or do a baby naming or anything like that. And then at some point, I changed my mind, I guess. It's kind of gradually happened. As for who inspires me, I could give you a whole list of like motivational, these role models I have. I listed a few that are still with us, of course, within the AFA, and there's all kinds of historical figures, but I won't bore everyone with like this long soliloquy on my personal motivations.
Fair enough. Sage of Sylvania asks, what is the order the next Hoffs will be built in? I think the order I heard on a previous stream was Freyshoff, then Tiershoff, then Braggieshoff. But beyond these, I don't know the order. Well, first, good job. You're spot on those. Following Braggieshoff will be Heimdallshof, then Vidarshof, then Valleyshof, then Ullershof, and then Forsettishof. And that's what we're firm on at this point. And that's the order that's presented in the Eddic poem, The Gylfaginning. And that's a poem that Gothi Svan and I will be discussing here in about 3 weeks, I believe, on one of these episodes of Victory Never Sleeps. Sarah asks, what has been the most memorable bloat you have performed? Trent?
Definitely the Odin bloat I got to do for leadership at Fall Fest. Every bloat I do is memorable because I'm really anxious beforehand, and then I kind of center myself and I feel really in the moment. So they're all memorable. But being there in Baldershof for the first time and being able to do that was something really special. There was a moment where Witten Callahan was doing her thing, the like hail the Aesir, the ancestors, etc. And it was like I kind of stopped hearing for a minute. My heart started beating really fast, and I kind of felt that inspiration. And it was really fitting since it was an Odin bloat, of course. And I remember just thinking, "Oh man, this is going to be awesome." So that's definitely been the most memorable for me so far.
All right. Next question, also from Sarah. Gothi Trent, Madison and you are such an adorable couple. How have you made practicing Asatru together as a couple a priority in your lives? Before you answer that, they are a ridiculously adorable couple. They're absolutely the couple that we want on the poster. You guys are doing it right. So, yeah, how have you made practicing Asatru together as a couple a priority in your lives?
Well, we just go to AFA stuff as often as we can, and we'll talk about Asatru stuff, and she does all the artwork for a lot of the AFA stuff, so I'll help her with stuff for that. Like she made that awesome Wheel of the Year thing that you guys might have seen on MeWe. So I gave my input on that, and it's I've been practicing Asatru for 4 or 5 years longer than she has, so of course I always get to have like these little teaching moments. So it's like I always have somebody I can bother with my long-winded Asatru stuff. So that's pretty much it. It just is part of our lives. There's not really an effort that needs to be made to make it part of our lives.
I think all of our wives are probably long suffering with our listening to our bursts of inspiration we get about Gothi stuff. I appreciate their patience with that. Next up, Katla asks, for both of you, favorite story of helping bring someone home to our folk? Trent, go ahead.
I don't know. I'm having to think about it a little bit. Do you have one in mind? Do you want to go ahead?
Well, see, you messed me up, Trent, because I was hoping to use the time that you were giving your answer to think of mine. So there have been a lot, and I've talked about this before. That moment where you get to bring somebody home and they see that it's real and that this is where they're supposed to be. It's such a special thing. I'm trying to think of a time where I've helped somebody who was on the outside get in, and without mentioning anybody's names, because I don't know if that'd be appropriate, but I remember one time, for those of you that don't know, I was born and raised in Alaska. And so time zone wise, if people are up in the middle of the night with questions across the country, I was one of the last ones to go to bed. I also worked as a bouncer in Alaska for a long time. So it meant my hours were all over the place. And I was a folk builder up there, and one of the guys anybody around the world could reach when all the rest of the United States folk builders were asleep. I remember I got a couple of questions from guys that were in our Northern Plains region. And I was able to talk to them over a period of time. And this is when I was, just a folk builder up in Alaska. And it was really nice because I was able to help them come home. One of them, I was able to help start a kindred in the Dakotas. And, I didn't realize that I would get a chance to meet them years later. The first time I was in that part of the country was when I became an Alsherjargothi in 2016. And these conversations that I had probably happened in in 2009, 2010. So it was really special to get to meet those guys later down the line, and have come to found out that I was a big part of them coming home to Asatru and coming home to the AFA. That meant a lot to me. Your turn, Trent.
All right. I think one of my favorites has been a really recent one that so it was a gentleman whose wife applied first, and she had been Asatru for a while because she had read some of Ron McMahon's stuff, and she applied to the AFA, and I vetted her since she was in Georgia, and we talked and stuff, and that was cool. And then she said, "Hey, my husband wants to ask a few questions. He's not Asatru, but his values align with ours, and he wants to ask some questions." And I had like a 2 or 3 hour long phone call with the guy, and by the end, he was like, "Well, you know what? I might give it a shot." And then, like the next day, he's just excitedly texting me all this stuff he's read, like I hadn't heard it before, but he was just so excited about it. And he was apologizing, like, "Oh, I'm sorry, you already know all this." And like, yeah, I did, but well, like you said, that's probably the best moment is when it kind of becomes real for someone, and they just have like this new life in them, this like kind of vigor to just really jump right into everything. And I got to do that guy's daughter's baby naming at the Njordhof dedication, so that was a huge honor.
As kind of a bonus answer on that, not really a story, but just something that ends up being really cool. And we'll get this with couples often, but what's really special is when someone does this and their parents see the impact it's made on their life, and when they can bring their parents with them. And we've had a number of times where folks were able to through their example and through the impact that Asatru's had on their life, to have their parents go ahead and join and become part of the AFA. And that's always a really special thing to see. It's so nice when you can get your family to participate in something that is so important to you and that you love so much. And it's such a difficult transition to get your parents that are oftentimes very much older to be involved in this that we do. It's a major change in, maybe what they grew up with. So I've seen that a few times, and that's been a really special testament to our gods and to Asatru. Don asks, what would be your advice for young married couples today and the daily struggles they encounter? Trent?
Advice. I would say don't feel like you're alone in the world. I know society is kind of set up in a way right now where it feels like young people, especially young, traditionally minded married couples, are kind of like set up for failure. But even if that is the case, you have your folk to lean on, you have your church. I guess, if we're talking AFA specific couples, you have your church to lean on. That'd be my biggest piece of advice, honestly, is just don't let that feeling of loneliness overtake you. Realize that you have people in your lives that can help you out and that can be there for you. And don't be afraid to reach out to one of our Gothar for marriage counseling. Pretty much all of us are married, have been for varying lengths of time, so we'll make sure to get you some kind of help if you need it.
I'm not sure if that was a Trent question or both. Because it wasn't specified, I'm going to throw in my 2 cents as well. What I think is really important, and I know I've said this a number of times on these shows, build your family and your relationship around the AFA. The more you can make the different parts of your life all fit in and be holistic with your faith, the more buttressed you are against those struggles. That's what we work so hard to do here in the AFA, and it gets better all the time, but there's so much out there in the world that's crazy and that's just out of whack today. And I think we all know that, but there's so much right in here in the AFA that we're all working so hard to build. when that's your circle of friends, when that's your family and that's your support group, the world's a lot less crazy, or at least your world is a lot less crazy. And you have something positive to come back to as a home base. You have something positive to build your life and your family around. And you have a really good group of people to have your kids interact with, to have your spouse make friends and lasting relationships with, and for you guys as a couple to build friendship with. So I would really encourage you to make our gods and Asatru a fundamental, glue that holds your family together. James asks, to both of you, what is your favorite ritual to officiate and why? Trent?
I really enjoy baby namings. I haven't done a wedding or a funeral yet. I think my favorite ritual to lead is Sumble. Stumble's always been my favorite. I think it's a lot of people's favorites. So I got to lead it at Thorshof Sigerblot a couple months ago, and it was, I don't know how to put it into words. It was just really cool to kind of be the big guy sitting at the head of the table and telling everybody the rules and stuff. I don't know. That's probably my favorite.
So my favorite has always been baby namings. It's just such a happy and such a special time and such a special thing to be there for. You're there with these new parents that are so happy, and these little babies that scream and cry at the worst possible moments during the ceremony you're trying to do. But it's just such a beautiful thing to be part of. And I'm ridiculous. I can't do a baby naming without crying and tearing up and blubbering. And that's just kind of how I'm built. But I love baby namings. I would say the biggest honor of a ceremony to perform has been the few funerals that I've performed. I can't say it's my favorite, but I'm very honored that families would trust me to do that as a send-off to their loved ones. Martin asks, do you guys have any other podcasts you like on the topic of Asatru, or just interesting subjects in general? Trent, go ahead and go first.
I'm not really a podcast guy, honestly. And if it's not AFA, it's not Asatru. So in my spare time, I listen to the British History podcast on Spotify just because, I'm English and I'm a nerd, so that's what I do. Other than that, no.
I get these questions and I'm not trying to dodge them. I'm just not really a podcast guy either. When I'm at the gym, I always like to listen to books on tape, or when I'm on a long drive, I listen to a lot of things on Audible, a lot of history stuff. I'm listening to Adrian Goldsworthy's books on ancient Rome right now. I've listened to quite a few of his stuff, and I'm working through that catalog right now. But a lot of history books on Audible I really enjoy. Yeah, that's the best I got. I'm sorry. I wish I could give you better advice on podcasts. Hopefully some folks over in the side chat may have something a little bit more for you. Tim asks, Gothi Trent, as practitioners of our ancestral faith, how does attending European cultural festivals further our connection to the ancestors and gods? Matt, can you share your thoughts as well?
It just helps insofar as kind of putting you in touch with, I guess any European cultural festival would put you in touch with that greater Aryan culture, but there's probably something particularly special about attending a festival that relates to a culture that your ancestors were a part of, like Highland Games, Irish Fests, things like that. I would imagine it connects you more to your ancestors than the gods specifically. But yeah, I don't know, I haven't been to anything like that, but I would assume it really just makes you feel at home in a sense and just helps you connect with those ancestors.
You know what Trent said, but also it's one of the few times in the modern world where folks, specifically white folks, get to be proud of where they come from. And that's really nice to be part of. They're folks that, you know, maybe aren't part of what we do, but for that moment, for that time that they're there, they get to full-throatedly celebrate their European heritage. And that's really nice to see and be a part of. I've had some really good experiences with the Highland Games. I used to participate in the Alaska Highland Games pretty regularly. And I also did one while I was in Florida. It's been a long time. My joints are not what they used to be, but that's a lot of fun. And it's something really special about going out there and competing in something seriously when you're wearing your family's tartan. I have a ancient Ross hunting kilt that I was wearing and still got it in the other room. And it's just, it's special. It's hard to put words around, but it's neat not only when you attend it, but when you're part of it in that way. And being a competitor in the Highland Games is, you know, one of the really neat things I've got to do in my life. Daniel asks, can you speak on the importance of physical excellence as it pertains to spiritual health? Trent, you can go first.
Okay. So there's a thing people always say, they talk about like mind, body, spirit. And that's like one of those cliche things that people say, and it doesn't really have any meaning when they say it, but it is a real thing. The mind, body, spirit connection is very real. So when you go and you work out and you apply your will to something, especially something that's going to make you stronger or make you better or make you healthier, it really does wonders for your mental health, of course, and your spiritual health as well. It's like we always, people always say onwards and upwards or whatever it is. That's a real thing. And working out is a big part of that, is you're taking what you have and making something from it.
I think there's a couple of really important things to be said about it. The state of your physique is a very obvious advertisement for a lot of aspects of your health. And, our faith is a holistic faith. It's not about going to church on Sundays. It's about living a life as an Asatru that you're healthy and whole all around. It's very important. And your physical condition is a shining beacon to the rest of the world on how seriously you take yourself. If you are in very good physical condition, a lot of things. First, if you're looking good, you feel good, you've got your head up, you have a pride in yourself, and that shines. That's extremely important. We want our faith and the AFA and our gods to be associated with good-looking people. Given the option, it's better to look good than to not look good. Beyond that, being physically healthy is certainly important. It's important for all of those reasons. It's important for mental health. It's important for self-esteem. The other thing that, folks certainly know is being in good shape requires discipline. It requires discipline as far as your working out and your athleticism, but it also requires a lot of discipline in the kitchen. You showing the world that you have that discipline and that you're a person of that kind of bearing speaks volumes about your spiritual health. And I think it's a really important thing. And it's a conversation that I had with our founder, Steve McNallen, a number of years ago. I think when I first became Alsherjargothi, and we both certainly agree that your physical condition says a lot about your spiritual condition. And I'd love to see all of us get as spiritually healthy, as mentally healthy, and as physically healthy and beautiful as we possibly can be. And, we all got areas we can improve on it. But the important thing is that every day is an opportunity to be a little bit better than we were the day before. And I want us all to reach out and strive for that. Lawrence Forbes, thank you, sir. You are a loyal viewer and contributor to this program. Thank you so much. And you just gave us 10 Canadian dollars. We appreciate that. Good evening, Matt and Trent. I get that Aryan is a politically charged word in our current environment. But at some point in the future, when we're stronger and more recognized/accepted, any thoughts on changing the AFA to the Aryan Folk Assembly? Trent, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes. No, we shouldn't do that. Not because there's anything against the word Aryan, but just because we're the Asatru Folk Assembly. We are Aryan, yes, but we are Asatru. And I guess the two are one and the same in a way, but it's the Asatru Folk Assembly, and me personally, I'd like to see it stay that way. I would definitely be open to using the word Aryan in the future more. I know people, like, when we call ourselves white, that's a great identifier and it's really clear and cut. But I think words like Aryan would be cool to bring back more mainstream, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with Trent. First, branding's important. Asatru Folk Assembly is really important. It's important because as a church, our fundamental basis that defines our existence is our troth to the Aesir, is us being literally Asatru. Race is very important. Race is certainly a necessary thing for you to be able to participate in our spiritual, our ethnic spirituality, our ethnic religion, certainly as the Asatru Folk Assembly. But it's a requirement to get in the door. It's not a completion of what's required. You don't just have to be an Aryan man or woman. You have to be an Aryan man or woman who is loyal to and defines themselves by their loyalty to our gods. And that's really fundamental and essential. But also, like Trent said, I would love to use the term more often. It's something I'm proud of. It's something I certainly don't shy away from using now, but I think that we are strategic and we try to make sure there's a context when we use it, because there is so much confusion out there in the larger world. Nathan asks, Trent, what for you is the most difficult and the most important part of being a Gothi?
I would say probably just missing time with my wife and my family, having to answer calls. But I don't want to make it seem like it's a burden, I guess. But I would say that's the closest thing to being difficult, is having to answer calls at any hour. But like I said, it's an honor to be the one that's charged with taking those calls.
That's legit. I want you guys to all realize that our Gothar choose a responsibility for themselves to where there's no office hours. You're a Gothi 24/7. I mean, there are times where you're more or less engaged in the more, administrative aspects of it. But when it comes to being there for our folk who are in need, our Gothar are always there. And you guys can reach out to gothar@runestone.org anytime, and we will respond to you. One of us will respond to you very, very quickly, and we will do our very best to help any of you guys that are having a problem. And that's members or non-members. If you're having a problem and you need to reach out to a Gothi, please reach out there. If you don't remember that or whatever, Matt Flavel at runestone.org, please reach out to me and I will help you, or I will get you somebody who can help you, or both, as quickly as I possibly can. We're here for you guys all the time. And it's really important to us that you know that and that you take advantage of that. So we've got it queued up to show off the work of Trent's lovely wife, Madison. Here is her artwork on the Wheel of the Year. Everybody take a gander. It's beautiful. Madison does lovely work. She is very, very talented, and we're really appreciative of the time she puts in. She helps with our Hoff design and our Hoff flags and various visual projects that we're working on. Matter of fact, tonight when we get off of this, I have a project I want to talk to her about a little bit. Nathan asked, Trent, a follow-up to Daniel's question. What is your take on one-arm push-ups, and how many can you do?
That's a dirty move, Nate. They're really impressive looking. I can do a lot of 2-arm push-ups. I would ask you how many pull-ups can you do, and we can compare those. But I will allow you the satisfaction of knowing that I currently can do like 0.75 of a 1-arm push-up at this time.
So that's unfortunate. Gothi East, I would like to see you increase your 1-arm push-up abilities. So there's not a hole in our Gothic kin fence when it comes to that. And I'd like to also venture that I think Nathan can probably destroy quite a few of us at the pull-ups. I would be curious to see you guys do a pull-up off. Maybe I will insist upon that the next time you two are together. 1-arm push-up advice, it's all about making that triangular base. A lot of people try to have a really narrow leg position. It's no good for the 1-arm push-ups. Put your hand in the center of your chest, get your legs wide across, do those 1-arm push-ups. It's a good thing. It's an impressive thing. Nate can do quite a few. Robert asks, is being a folk builder required before becoming a Gothi? Yes, it is. And I'll explain a little bit of why that is. For a long time, it wasn't. When I got ordained, the folk builders and the Gothar were two kind of separate paths that serve separate functions. And one of the things that we've worked to do is to unite those into a progression of responsibilities. A lot of folks don't realize the hard work that goes into being a Gothi. And that just is what it is. It's not anybody's fault per se. Like I mentioned earlier in the program, so much of what we do is behind the scenes that, you may never know about. But the responsibility is really important. I've had a lot of people when they first join, immediately ask, hey, can I be a Gothi? How do I be a Gothi? And I think a lot of people, when they're new to Asatru, think that what that largely entails is basically being a master of ceremonies when it comes to rituals. And that's one thing that we do, but it's not the most important thing that we do, and it's not the majority of what we do. Being a folk builder makes people in touch with the work that goes into running this church. Being a folk builder gets you acquainted with your local membership to where you deal with those people regularly and you know how everything works. And it prepares you because as a Gothi, you not only do all the Gothic responsibilities, but you're an overseer of the folk builders in your district. So you're really involved in the running of things. And this equips you to know that job and be able to do it, because you don't really stop being a folk builder. You just become a folk builder plus the Gothi responsibilities. So it really is essential. And we've had a lot of success. Since that's been a requirement, we've gotten a lot more very serious people into the program. And I think it's served us really well. Another misunderstanding I think some folks have when they get involved in Asatru, they see Asatru as a means to their personal spiritual advancement. And sometimes they act as though being us giving them the opportunity to be a Gothi is something that we owe them for their own spiritual benefit. Being a Gothi isn't about your own spiritual benefit. It's about serving our gods, our folk, and our church. It's about taking on tremendous responsibilities. And it's something that, it's not about whether you want to be one or not. It's about whether we trust you to be one and you're going to be of value to our gods, our church, and us for you to be one. And so that's why that's structured the way that it is. King of Cheese. I tried to explain to a friend of mine the afterlife of our faith, and I feel I only did a half service. I explained what I've picked up from Elder McNallen's book and elsewhere. I'm trying to read the second half of the question. I'm sorry, guys. That we either go to Helheim or go to one of the gods or goddesses may take you to them if you formed a good relationship with them. How would you explain it, and where did I mess up? Well, okay. First, Tony, I don't think you messed up at all. I think that we are in a time and in a society where everybody wants a really, really clear answer on everything. And I think that there's more variation in our afterlife than in some other people's religious traditions. First, I think that at the very least, what typically happens in our afterlife is one goes to the halls of their ancestors. And that's the most common afterlife experience. It's something that is confirmed by many, many near-death experiences. It's something that, we're pretty solid on. Is in your afterlife experiences, you go and reside with your people, with your ancestors. We do have mentions in our lore of you being judged in your afterlife, and I think that's absolutely the case. People who are very, very dishonorable and very bad, I think those people lose more and more of themselves in a process of dissolution. I think that's described in our lore in the term of venom and other things dissolving that person. I think with the worst extreme being that you're washed from existence and your component parts go back into the greater folk soul to be hopefully put to better use in the future. But I think most people go to their ancestors. I think there's another thing that happens, though. And this is what Steve McNallen talks about going to the halls of the gods. I don't think it's just your personal relationship with that God. I think it's your spiritual evolution and your personal evolution. There's the idea of ascension. And for those heroes, for those who have gone above and beyond, I think that they have the opportunity to ascend to something closer to where our gods are, and to commune with our gods in a closer and more special way. And I think that's what's described as feasting with the gods. And so, I think that we all should aspire to that. And it would be amazing if we have that opportunity. And I think that in the afterlife, we may have opportunities once we get there to ascend. In the AFA, we also believe in the idea of posthumous ascension. If you have created such a reputation for yourself that you're continually celebrated, worshiped, exalted, stories told about you and honored after your passing, that increases your reputation in the afterlife. And I think that helps propel you towards higher things. And that's the AFA understanding of our afterlife. None of us knows perfectly until we go there, but that's the best that we have to go on at this point. Amber asks, how do we bring more folk home? When I mention the AFA to those that are interested, the first thing they usually do for research is Google the AFA, and it tells them that we are wrongly a hate group. So, and I'll let Trent answer this in a second, but I want to address this first. Unfortunately, we can't make Google be fair to us. Though we've tried many, many times, we can't make Wikipedia be fair to us either. But it do. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. What we can do is direct them to alternate sources when they do that. So that's fine that they read that, but ask them critically. Okay, well, in those sources that say that we're a hate group, what hateful things do they say we've done? If you carefully read the SPLC article or any of the others, they don't mention any specific acts of hatred or mean-spirited things that we do, because we don't do those things. Their evidence with the air quotes for those of you listening in podcast land, they don't have any. they say they know what we really mean, or they randomly throw in people that aren't members of the AFA in the same sentence with us and imply that we have a connection that we don't have. But they can't point to hateful things that we do, because we don't. I would encourage all of those folks to watch our YouTube channel, and they can listen to me and Trent blab and whatever. But what I think is really special is getting them to watch our the little clip shows of our events or of our year. You know, we have the 2021 year in the AFA, of just slides of us doing nice things and families, and it's beautiful. A picture's worth 1,000 words, and it's very hard when they know us or when they see us to think of us in the way the media has portrayed us. I'd also say a couple of other things. First, courage is essential. And unfortunately, courage is not a commodity that everyone possesses. For our folk to come home in this day and age, it takes a certain amount of courage to step outside of the paradigm that this world has placed everyone in, and to think critically. And it also takes courage to do this next step that I would encourage everybody to do. If you have a problem and you want to ask us, if you are concerned, you have a question, you have to reach out and ask. And I don't expect you to trust our answer, but at least give us the opportunity to give you our side, and you can see which one sounds true and which one proves to be true. Anybody who is listening right now, if you want to, if you have questions, give me a call. 907-350-8252. If you call during this podcast or during this broadcast, I'm probably not going to answer. But other than that, you guys are welcome to call. We're happy to answer any questions. And unfortunately, that's probably the best I can do right now. What does happen and is true is the more successful we become and the more of you guys that come home, the easier it is for the next guy to come and join us. So I appreciate your courage. And if we can instill more courage in our folk, much more of our people will come home. Trent, what are your thoughts on how we bring more people home?
Honestly, a little bit of courage is needed, but the biggest thing is just being out, so to speak, as Asatru, being openly Asatru. And I mean real Asatru, AFA Asatru, not like the Wiccan BS that you see. Because, like we keep saying, AFA people are all good, righteous, normal people. You know, it's, if you can just be that and be Asatru, that's a shining example of what the AFA is and what the AFA is about. I mean, feel free to wear some of our awesome AFA t-shirts or hoodies while you do it. Use our slogans so people hear the mottos and ask what it's about. You vouch for folks, you can have them come to events to kind of get an idea of what we're about. Like the Alsherjargothi said, show them this podcast, show them YouTube videos. The biggest thing is just having a little courage and being openly AFA.
All right. Christine asks, and we'll let you start on these, Trent. Can you share with us the reason why the AFA dresses up for rituals and events? Also, Gothi Trent, how many bow ties do you own? And when are we getting AFA bow ties?
We dress up for rituals and events because we're going, first and foremost, just to be with our folk, and we don't want to look like slobs. And second, we're going before our gods, and we don't want to look like slobs. I mean, you can think of when maybe a couple generations back, probably your grandparents or your great-grandparents, when they would go to church, they would dress up, right? Because they were going to be before their God and in front of all their local congregation or flock or whatever. And they would dress nicely because they were in the presence of their people and the Abrahamic God. So I figure if people are willing to dress up for an Abrahamic God, we should absolutely dress up for our gods and for our folk and for our ancestors. As for bow ties, I really just got the two that I wear that match my tweed suits, but I think I own half a dozen or so.
All right, so here's a real question. Do you tie them yourself, or are they already tied?
They're already tied.
Wah, wah. So the AFA dressing up question, genesis of that, and credit is due where it is. It's not my idea. First person I saw do it was a gentleman who was a mentor of mine, Brad Taylor Hicks. I showed up to a midsummer and I was wearing jean shorts and a cutoff t-shirt. And it was hot in California and it was midsummer, and there's nothing wrong with that per se, I guess. But everybody there was wearing jeans and t-shirts and band shirts and whatever, and it was very, very casual. But Brad showed up and he was wearing a tweed suit, and I asked about that, and he said, well, if I would dress up to go to my grandparents, why wouldn't I dress up to go before our gods? And that's always stuck with me. And from that day forward, it's been very important to me. If we're willing to dress up for a wedding, for a funeral, for, a work Christmas party, for going to court, for anything that we would dress up for, why would approaching our gods in ritual be a lesser occasion than that? Don't we owe our gods putting our best foot forward? Isn't the day that we go and speak to our gods in ritual more important than those other mundane occasions that we think nothing of dressing up for? The other thing, in the West, that's what white people do when they go to church. Not just that, that's what all people have done historically when they go to something that's religious that they take seriously. And when you dress up, you hold yourself differently. I've known a lot of people in the AFA that were very resistant to the idea, but I talk them into it, and they'll put on a tie and a button-up shirt, and they hold their head higher, and they stick their chest out, and they feel like they're somebody, and they like, man, I look good. And they do look good. And we should all look good before our fellows, before our gods, before our families. Dressing up is always better than not dressing up. And I would encourage you guys all to, when you come before your gods, be your best self, present your best self. And Trent is certainly a fine example at doing that. Antonio asks, my question is, will there be a Hoff in Michigan? Antonio, absolutely. I promise you there will be a Hoff in Michigan. When will there be a Hoff in Michigan? That's the question. We are working towards it. Hopefully, Phrasehoff will be just south of you guys in Ohio. When we'll have a Hoff in Michigan, I don't know. Get your friends to join the AFA. Bring your friends home. We would love to have a Hoff in Michigan, and we will get there someday. You could help us get there faster, though. Nick asks, someone mentioned it in chat, so tell us about it. The AFA has a tartan? Yes, we do. The AFA has an officially registered tartan. A member of ours in Minnesota got that set up for us. It's really cool. It's awesome. If I had thought about it before this broadcast, I would have gotten Nick the graphic. Just so happens I have it pulled up here on my screen. So if you guys excuse me for a second, I will send it to Nick, and Nick can show you all. But we do, in fact, have a tartan, and it's pretty cool. Now, here's the trouble. Because there's not a lot of demand for our tartan, and for them to do the tartan right, they have to make special cloth. It's very expensive to get anything made in our tartan, but our tartan is officially registered. You can get whatever items you're willing to pay for in our tartan. So I just sent it to Nick, and he will have that up very soon for you guys, so you can see a picture of the beautiful AFA tartan. Nick, please throw that up as soon as you get it. I think people will know whoa, look at you, Nick. So Nick Rice, this guy deserves a round of applause. Trust me, they're applauding at home, Nick. You do a fantastic job producing this program. You make it look like $1 million. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. And got another monetized question, 10 more Canadian dollars for Lauren. There you go. Look, behold, the beautiful AFA tartan. You can get that done. I would love to see you guys get that done. I'd love for that price point to get something that the rest of us can get that done, but it is beautiful, and I really appreciate the effort that went into getting that made for us. And it is official, and it is registered. So Lawrence, with his 10 Canadian dollars, thank you so much, Lawrence Forbes, for your contributions. We really appreciate them. Thanks for the answer to my last question. I have strong political leanings, but I'm trying to chill on that a bit. Despite my serious side, I have a lighthearted and fun side. I know that Loki is not recognized by the AFA, but is there a god/goddess who exhibits similar fun-loving traits? All right, so there's a spectrum of Loki things that go from lovable prankster to the murder of Odin's son. So I don't want to say that any of our gods have any sort of similarity to that. But question was asked in a lighthearted way, so I'm going to try to give a lighthearted answer. There is humor amongst our gods. You see that a lot with Thor. You see a very serious side when lightning flashes in his eyes and it terrifies mortals. But you also see him laugh and feast and celebrate. And I don't think you see the same prankster element, but you certainly see joy and a jolliness. I think that if you look for joy in our gods, Frey and his father Njordr, I think they exhibit that happiness. And you feel that. One of the things that was really striking, I felt at Njordshof, was standing before Njordr there and just that feeling of joy and abundance and happiness and life is good. And I think the idea that life is good and life is abundant is shared by many of our gods and goddesses. And I think that playful, that happy, that fun spirit, I would say Frey and Thor and Njordr were probably the ones I would suggest most for that. What are your thoughts on that, Trent?
I don't have a specific god or goddess in mind for that, but the scene, so to speak, right before Balder is killed, you'll notice it says many of the gods and goddesses are throwing things at him to just watch them bounce off, and they're making a game of it and they're having fun. So that's just what comes to mind for me, is that the Aesir as a collective, they do have fun, they enjoy life, and they make little games of throwing things at Balder because they know it won't hurt him.
So, Human Manipulation Nation has a question. Hey, thank you so much for being here. You've been on all of these. You've been a very eager participant in these. Thank you for that. So he asks, when we step into the world, do you have any recommendations on how to approach social or political issues that we face? Trent, go ahead and take this first.
That kind of goes back to what we said earlier about courage. You just need to kind of have courage. There's I would say the biggest reason that so many of our societies, like social and political issues, have come about is because people have been afraid to speak up. That's a thing with our people, especially. We've always been so altruistic, I think. And lately it's gotten to the point of, we don't want to hurt feelings or whatever. But you can be assertive on your social and political views without, being a douchebag. You can just calmly say no to whatever it is, or calmly say, I'm not changing my stance on whatever it is. And at the end of the day, some people are going to get upset and go cry on Twitter or whatever it is people like that do. But for the most part, I think you'll find people will respect you for it. Even if they're like, okay, well, I want nothing to do with you, they'll just move on. So that's the biggest thing with a lot of this stuff, is just having some courage to be. And you know what? To quote the Odinshop motto, just do right and fear no one.
So all of that. But I think the other thing is, and Trent said this, but just to elaborate on it a little bit, don't be naive. Be courageous and stand up and say what you mean and mean what you say. But there's a big difference in that. There's this phenomenon amongst our people is when they go on the internet and they create a fake name and use a fake picture, they say the most outlandish, ridiculous things in the most in-your-face possible way, because it feels so good to finally be able to say the things that you've been afraid to say. And so they spew it out in the most repulsive way they can think of because it's been repressed for so long. What I would say is speak nobly. Realize that what you say and how you say it is going to be seen by everyone, not just your friends, but your enemies, your employers, your family. So own it. Believe what you believe, but say it in a way that's honest and that reflects your real feelings. Most of us aren't bad people. We're good people who have good values and good things to say. Keep that in mind when you're speaking. It's really easy to become embittered and frustrated by all of the things we don't like, and rightly so. There's so many things in this world that are so far askew from how they should be. It's easy to get mad. Don't speak out of anger. Speak out of love. Speak about the things you love, the things you value, the things you want for you and for your family. I think that we do much better speaking politically or about anything to people when we talk about what we love rather than all the things that we don't like or all the ways things are messed up. Think about what we do want to see and the world we do want for our children. Talking positively about what we're trying to build and who we want to become, those are beautiful things. And I think we need to speak those courageously and thoughtfully. Zoe, Gothi Trent, is there any specific moment in your time in the AFA where you felt, this is where I belong?
This is going to be one of those answers that's going to make you kind of roll your eyes a little bit, but every moment I feel like that. I guess the first moment I felt like that, though, was me and my kindred pulling up to Star in the South 2016 and seeing, at the time, Alsherjargothi McNallen sitting on the porch of this 4-H camp in a rocking chair. And, of course, I'm kind of like freaking out because this guy's like, he's Steve McNallen. And I was going to just kind of walk past him and not try and like bother him by being like, oh my God, you're Steve McNallen. But he stopped me and introduced himself to me. And we talked about the Army a little bit because that was like a month before I left for infantry school. And I don't know, it's hard to put into words really, but everybody was just so normal and cool. And as time goes by, it just gets better and better. So there's every moment there I feel like I belong.
So Bobby asks, what is the best and worst advice you have received when it comes to being a Gothi? Go for it, Trent.
I'm very privileged to be able to say that I haven't really received any bad advice. All the people above me and at my level that are, able to give me advice, they've always given good advice. As far as the best advice, I would say it's come from the Alsherjargothi. Just kind of, I don't have like a cool quote of what you said, but just being patient with people and kind of having some patience and some some kindness, I guess. So that's a big thing is, you know, people get on our nerves or whatever, but you have to do the right thing and be kind, even in tough situations.
You know, I'm trying to think on this. It's a really good question. And it's a question that I think deserves good, well thought answers. And Trent and I are just sitting here quick trying to shoot from the hip on what we've got. But it's one I'm after this call tonight, I'm gonna give some thought to, because I think it's a really, I don't know, gets my brain churning. So when I got ordained, the AFA Gothar as a whole were a much different place than we are now. And I think we've come a long way since then. So I will choose that the best Gothar advice I've ever got came from Yost's tomb. On his tombstone, it says, "Do right and fear no one." And that's Odinshof's motto. And it's an important touchstone with me to go back to and make sure that fear doesn't dictate my actions and doesn't guide my life. And that fear can come in a lot of different ways. One of the things that I deal with as the Alsherjargothi of the Asatru Folk Assembly, I am very aware that what I say impacts people. If I'm not careful about what I say, it can hurt people, and it can hurt their families, and it can hurt the AFA that we love so much and work so hard to build. So it's really tempting a lot of the time to say less or to go the super safe route and not say the things that need to be said, because I don't want to hurt anybody, and I don't want to cause damage to our membership and to folks outside of myself. And I'm aware that I have the ability to. But it's been really important to hearken back to that advice and to make my first concern doing the right thing, and temper how I do the right thing based on how it may affect people, but not let fear direct the course of either myself or the Asatru Folk Assembly. Ultimately, I owe you guys and I owe our gods better than that. And so that, I think, is the best advice I've gotten. Worst advice, I think, gets summed up, and there's no guy I can picture that said this to me, but it was this old Asatru, thing everybody said is about this, the religion with homework. Any religion you take seriously is a religion with homework. But what I found so much about being Gothi, it's not about the lore. Lore's important, but it's about being real and being able to help our folk. When people come to you with tragedy in their family, they don't want you to recite some obscure Viking poem to them. They want you to give them advice from the heart about how to heal and how to live right and how to make their family whole again as best you can. And the Lord can help you understand our gods better, but your connection that you build through real experience and through your life is what's going to be able to help guide those people and give them the spiritual advice they need. So that's probably the worst advice. So I hope that was helpful and got to what you were asking. Bodie asks, is there a program on the horizon to help adult new members to understand and internalize the lore? No, but several people have asked about that lately. We had something like that at one time. When we get off of the call tonight, I'm going to ask Whit and Callahan, my my good friend Brandy that does so many of these things to help me out and help us out. I'm going to ask her about that because I think we have some materials and some things along those lines. So please get with me if I forget it. And it's good to see you on here tonight. Finn asks, is the AFA against shows that blackwash European histories or mythology or fantasy inspired by history? Or yes, so there's a lot of that. And would you not encourage watching shows like Lord of the Rings or Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, or Vikings Valhalla? You guys are grown. Watch what you want to watch. Yes, the AFA is absolutely against blackwashing stuff. We love history. History should be about what happened, right, wrong, or otherwise. It's not about your current social issues. We do everyone a disservice when we don't portray history accurate to the best of our knowledge and understanding. It's a disservice to everyone. I would never, ever do that to other people's history. And I do not stand for our history being robbed from us. And it's obvious on things where they blackwash and there's random, Victorian era Scottish earls that are black. That's absurd. Where you watch Vikings Valhalla and real historical Viking personages are portrayed by Africans. That's not right. And it would be universally understood as not right if we did that to Blacks or to Asians with their history. It is equally as not right when they try, due to political correctness, to do that to our history. It's just wrong. With fantasy, it's a little bit different. It's still wrong when it misportrays books and long-standing traditions. And it's insulting, as if these other groups of people can't come up with their own stories and their own histories and tales of their own people. That's the most racist thing, is taking that away from them people and making it to where the only things they can have that are worthwhile is stealing white things. That's offensive, and it should be offensive to them as well. But I take this a step further. The racial considerations aside, I think that anytime a film is done, every single effort should be extended to portray real people the best that we knew they were. When we choose to, out of our need for heroes and villains, to villainize historical figures inappropriately, we rob real people of the real lives that they led. And that's fundamentally against the principles of Asatru. We worship our ancestors. We honor our ancestors. Truth is just as valuable now and today as it is when we're portraying events of the past. Truth should guide us in all of those endeavors. And I believe that strongly. Trent, do you have any thoughts on this?
Pretty much just everything you said. And yeah, the biggest thing I would say is, and I know it's a common thing to say in this, but what if the shoe were on the other foot? They're not going to want to watch a movie about Martin Luther King Jr. where he's played by Ryan Gosling or something. That's just stupid. And I would be offended on their behalf a little bit if they tried to do that. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. That's just silly and it's absurd. And they know what they're doing. And
so there's a common misconception too that white people used to do this in the old movies. And yeah, a lot of the time you'd have different races of people played by white actors. But if they were playing Indians, they wear red makeup to try and darken their hair and dye their hair black and try to look as Indian as they could. They tape their eyes back and get silly teeth to try to look Asian. They do different stuff to at least try to portray the person correctly. That's not done. There's an idea to steal our history from us and to teach the current generation that's really how it was, and that these different races of people were responsible for things that our ancestors were responsible for. And that's wrong. Joe asks, what are your ethnic backgrounds, and what are both of your thoughts on common roots of the Aryan race? Trent, go ahead and go first.
I'm, as you can tell by my general pastiness and baby face here, I'm mostly English, 80-something% by a few DNA test standards. I'm just kind of broadly British. I've got some German, Dutch, French, and Danish ancestry a little bit as well. Pretty much just Anglo. What about you, sir?
So largely my ancestors are from mostly from England, some from Scotland and from Ireland as well. But my most recent, I think that makes up the bulk of my ancestry, but my most recent ancestors that came to the Americas were an interesting couple, and I wish I knew a little bit more about them and their relationship. The gentleman named Fritz Montanden was a Swissman from the Neuchâtel. Now it's escaping me what French states are called. It's going to bother me until I figure it out. Hopefully somebody in the chat can save me here. Canton, I think. Anyways, yeah, he came over, and he came over separately, and his wife was named Sophie, and she came from France. So those are my most recent folks in the New World. Most of my people have been in the Americas, mostly in the Carolinas, Arkansas, and Mississippi for hundreds of years, since before our nationhood, certainly. So that's most of my ethnic background that I'm aware of. So Trent, why is Rust in Peace the greatest piece of art known to mankind? This is a false question, but I'll let you answer it anyways.
I mean, have you listened to it? Come on.
So I knew I should have done this before the show. I did not queue up that picture. I should have. Perhaps Nick can find it on his end, because I think it's worth all of us viewing. That being said, Thundercross asks, does the AFA intend to create intentional communities? So I'm glad you asked that. And it's very interesting when certain thoughts and ideas move and percolate in the folk soul. I think that's a really good idea. I would encourage you to stay tuned in the coming months and within the next year to hear a little bit more. And I'll tease that out there. Sorry for that. And so that being said, I'll throw out this too. A lot of people want the buy-in on this idea of these intentional communities. But what I found over the years, and everyone talks about this, but I found over the years that successful people picking up from where they live and putting their stock in an intentional community is a very hard sell. It doesn't mean it's not a worthy one, doesn't mean it's not something that I think we should aspire towards, but it's hard to do. It's very easy for folks that haven't been successful in life to do those things and to be very fluid on where they live. And so that's a danger that we got to be careful of. Other thing, our people love to talk. They love to talk. They love to plan. They love to say they're going to do stuff. But what I've found in my time is the commitment to actually do that takes a little bit more. And a lot of people, there's quite a difference in the people who say they're about that life to the people who are actually about that life. Other thing I'd say on that, there are levels of participation in that. You can certainly start by moving to the same county as other AFA members, or even moving to the same town as other AFA members. What I would love to see everybody who's able to out there today move to the towns where we have HOFs. If we had a migration of AFA members to Brownsville, California, to Linden, North Carolina, to Murdoch, Minnesota, and to White Springs, Florida, that would get us so much closer to the real value of intentional communities that you're talking about. But pay attention for the next few months, and I think we got something that'll be exciting for you. King of Cheese, a question I got a while ago. What's the difference between cunning and cowardice? Trent, what do you think?
I'm not sure I understand the context, I guess, but cunning, when I think of the word, it's kind of a cleverness where I guess, so if I think of cunning, I think of Odin, some of the things he's done to attain things like the runes or the meat of inspiration. Cowardice, I think more like Loki, I suppose. Hiding from things, hiding from the consequences of your actions. I don't know. That's an interesting dichotomy I had never really thought about.
Nick, play that funky music, white boy. Load it up.
All right. I just want to say this doesn't detract from the awesomeness of that album. All right.
No, it clearly does. He's strumming on a slug. He's strumming on a giant slug and he's weeping. Clearly that detracts. All that aside, so the cunning cowardice deal. Excuse us, we talk about really important things here, but sometimes some levity is worth doing.
This is important.
Cunning and cowardice, though, it's very, very easy for people to delude themselves and pretend that they're cunning when they're really acting out of cowardice. It's easy for you to strategically comfort yourself by taking the fear response, but you really know on the inside it's all part of your grand plan. Be honest with yourself. Truth, I spoke about earlier, is one of our most important values and virtues. Are you really being cunning and acting on some, 3D chess or 4D chess rather? Or are you just doing the mental gymnastics to justify a cowardly decision that you make? And that's human nature. We all do that. None of us are immune to that. It's really easy to think all the roundabout ways to it's really the right thing to do this easier thing or this thing that is safer, but pretending that really in the back of your mind you have a grand plan to do the big reveal. And so often the big reveal never happens. I think we're much better served when we don't try to outsmart ourselves. We act boldly, we act courageously, and we act responsibly. I think that's the best thing to do. I think I've heard too many people in my life pretend to be cunning when they're really masking cowardice. And, at different stages in my life, I know I've done that too. I think we all do. But we need to recognize that and correct it when we can. Buddy asked both of y'all, where do you see the AFA in 25 years? Trent, where do you see us in 25 years?
All over the galaxy. I don't know. 25 years, realistically, I think we'll have a HOF in most states. I like to think we'd have one in Sweden by then, maybe in the United Kingdom. Oh, man. The Gothar program will be even better than it is now. We'll have so many awesome people in leadership, even more than we already do. I don't know. It's sort of like after Ragnarok, how Gimli is described with all this shining and all this gold and all this happiness. That's kind of how I see the AFA now a little bit, but in 25 years, like I've said a couple times, it's only going to keep getting better. So 25 years from now, I see it, just being even better than it is now.
So it's a hard question to answer, because we're in a time where things are evolving and changing so quickly. Certainly, like Trent said, it's going to be shining and beautiful and amazing. Exactly how that amazingness is going to manifest, it's very hard to tell. I think certainly all 12 of those Hofs I mentioned earlier are going to come to fruition, and we'll be worshiping all 12 of those gods in their own Hofs. I think that spread will be much more even in the United States. And I think also by 25 years, we'll certainly have an international Hof somewhere outside of the United States. If you ask today, that Hof would probably be in Sweden. But by that time, maybe it's in Australia. Maybe it's in South Africa. I'd love to see that, though. I think that in 25 years, we'll certainly have 5 or more digits worth of membership. I think in 25 years, we'll have active AFA communities and hopefully Hofs in all 50 states. 50 new, 26 new Hofs in 25 years. That's a big ask. We'll see. We'll see how close we get. I think we will have thriving AFA communities in different parts of the United States than we see today, certainly. I think, as Trent said, our leadership will evolve exponentially. One of the cool things about our leadership and our Gothar in specific is we get to share each other's experience. Every new Gothi gets to come in with the wealth of experience of all of the Gothar who've come before them, who've seen, who've experienced, who've done. I'd like to think that we do a good job as Gothar, and we certainly do our very best. But we learn from our successes, and even more, we learn from our failures. The more we have leadership come in, they get to learn from all of that and bring that knowledge into the future with them. 25 years is going to be amazing, and I'm excited to see what the next 25 years will bring. Don asks, actually, first, before we get to that, we're almost 2 hours in. We've got 2 more questions left. If you guys got questions, please go ahead and throw them up. Like I said, we'll gladly answer any of you guys' questions. If you don't, that's fine too, and we'll call it a night. But we've got 2 more questions, so if you got more, please go ahead and get those out there for us. Oh, good call. So if you want to join us on Entropy, I forgot to mention this at the top of the 7 o'clock hour. You're able to give us tips and super chats. We really appreciate those. So go ahead and throw those up if you'd like to. But we appreciate you guys. Anyways, Don asks, Trent, what are some daily rituals you do or recommend to begin your day?
There's a lot of little things you can do. Honestly, when I first wake up, I start like running through my head of whatever AFA stuff I might have to get done that day, like people I have to get back to or whatever. Or I'll just think about one of the gods or something, but that's just me, my brain's kind of all AFA pretty much. But something I used to do, I need to get back into doing because it was really cool, is doing a rune pull every day. And I would just pull one rune out of my Folk Futhark set, and I would just kind of think of how that could relate to my day. And, you'll find a way to relate it and learn a lesson from it, I think. Other things you can do, if you wake up and you have time, when the sun rises, you can greet the day. That's a fun thing that a lot of people do. Another thing you can do is just when you get time, go outside, take a little walk through nature or just outside in general, and just sort of think about the work that went into making all that happen when Odin, Billy, and Vey kind of crafted Midgard. So, yeah, there's not like like a process of steps I could give you, I guess. But just lots of little meditative things like that that sort of help enrich your worldview and your day a little bit.
Something really simple that I do, and I'm more of a nighttime guy than a morning guy. I think any of my ritual work I do come before my altar is done in the evening. But in the morning, so I wake up with my daughter because I've got a 2.5-year-old, and when she decides it's time to wake up, it's time to wake up. I always take her down the stairs, and on doing that, we go by my picture wall with all of our ancestors, and we say good morning to the ancestors. And it may be simple, but it's really neat when we go downstairs and descend into our day in the world. We greet our ancestors and say, hail the ancestors. And, I hold up my little daughter and say, good morning, ancestors. And she very often will point at one that's, I don't know, the picture stands out to her or something. And I'll tell her who it is and maybe a little bit something about them. And I'll reassure her that her ancestors love her. And I set her down and we go about our day. It's such a simple little thing, but it's something that we do every day and kind of a nice way to check in, I think. Notice over in the side, people talking about classic country. Appreciate that. Somebody mentioned Marty Robbins. If you haven't heard it, if you don't have it, if you don't listen to it, Trail Songs and Gunfighter Ballads by Marty Robbins is amazing. Although now that I'm a little bit more racially aware, I don't like El Paso as much as I once did. That being said, Gothi Trent, you mentioned earlier being in Georgia. Do you find it hard to follow such a traditional European religion in the Bible Belt?
That's another one of those things that goes back to courage. My personal experience with this, a lot of times, the absolute worst reaction I'll get when I tell someone I'm Asatru is they'll be like, well, that's weird. I'll pray for you. You're going to hell, but you're a good guy, so whatever. That's like the worst reaction I get. So, no, not really, but you have to also keep in mind that while, yes, we are in the Bible Belt here in Georgia, we're also living in a time where pretty much any religion, and especially religion for our people, is kind of looked down on as like superstition or old or obsolete, I guess. And so, Christians don't really care too much. A lot of them are kind of just glad I have some sort of faith.
I've said this before, but the paradigm we face today is atheism and progressivism versus traditionalism. And Christians or religious people in general that have a traditional outlook and traditional Western values are much more natural allies to us than quote unquote pagans who have completely degenerate and misguided senses of morality. And I find that that's a reaction we get from traditional folks of all different religions more often than not. Now, some of them may have doctrines that say that we're destined for damnation, but they kind of brush that off and are just happy that we're good, normal folks that have values that them and their families can recognize, as opposed to the other end of the spectrum that's very scary to all of us with traditional values and with children. So while I'm thinking of it, on the album I just mentioned, Trail Songs and Gunfighter Ballads by Marty Robbins, Hanging Tree is a really good song. It's a song I don't think enough people are familiar with, but I really enjoy it. I used to listen to that album, as a matter of fact, with my grandfather. I can remember we'd just go for drives in his he had Eddie Bauer Bronco 2. And that was my first car. I actually inherited that after he passed. And we would drive around town, and we'd sometimes get some fried shrimp from Skipper's. Sometimes we'd get a Whopper from Burger King, and we would we'd listen to some Marty Robbins and remember some good times with my grandpa. Thanks for that. Just kind of random aside, but I'll put it out there. Shovelhead, I'm a new subscriber and I have a question. Are y'all's mission the preservation of the white race or just paganism like Old Norse worship? So for our mission, I'd really encourage you to look at runestone.org. That's our website. It's got our declaration of purpose there, and we have a lot of things on there. I'm visited by my beautiful daughter, Aubrey. Funny enough, the grandfather that I just mentioned where we'd listen to Marty Robbins, I actually named this little girl after because, Aubrey has kind of gone back and forth between being a boy's name and a girl's name. And I always thought it was pretty when I was a kid. Anyways, it was a quick drive-by on that. And she took out my camera. So let me try to get this figured. I hope you guys can still hear me. Still on your question, certainly the preservation of the white race is part of what we do. Because our gods and our race are connected. We believe that really strongly. And that's because we're an ethnic faith. We think that all folk have apologize for the camera issues, guys. All folk have a unique connection to their gods. And certainly as white people, we have a unique connection to our gods. And the AFA is about developing and preserving that. So yeah, of course. And we want to have kids and grandkids that look like us and look like our ancestors. And we're proud of that. So to answer your question, I think that's the quickest answer I have. But we're absolutely, again, just like earlier in the conversation, I don't want to name us the Aryan Folk Assembly. We're the Asatru Folk Assembly. So it's not just that. So much of what we are isn't just that we're preserving white folks, but we happen to be white folks who are loyal to the Aesir, and we're worshiping the Aesir. We are the first group to establish Hoffs to our gods once again. We have 4 Hoffs now to our gods. Despite any confusion, our focus is on our gods and on our faith and our spirituality. And certainly that has an ethnic component because we want what's best to our extended family, to our people. But yeah, so both of those things combine for what we're trying to do. I hope that answers your question. And again, I direct you to our website with our declaration of purpose for more on that. Daniel asks, apologies if this has been asked, but Trent, how have you grown as a person since becoming a Gothi?
I've just learned a lot of I guess skills in almost like stoicism, I guess. So like in counseling, somebody might be having the worst day of their life, and their emotions are all over the place, and you need to kind of be the bigger person and you need to stay calm and steady and give them solid advice or just a solid ear to hear what they have to say. You need to exercise patience in that regard. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is just the patience.
So forgive me, I know you probably get tired of this. It's been really a special privilege. Trent mentions that he has been in the AFA his entire adult life. It's been really special to watch Trent grow into manhood in the AFA and to grow and develop. And I think he was fantastic when he joined the AFA. It's been really nice to watch him develop as a man in his time in the AFA. And I'm really honored to be able to watch that as that continues. So Ryan asks, what is the folk Futhark? Is it like the Elder Futhark? So we talked about this a little bit earlier, but basically the folk futhark is combining the pictures or the rune staves of the younger futhark, the Anglo-Saxon futhork, the elder futhark, and the Armanen runes together to get a holistic combination of all those systems. Now we're using the Elder Futhark as the template, but we're using some of the different shapes and designs of those runes from the different systems as a celebration of our overall runic history. As far as esoteric and linguistic meanings, certainly we've kept them, all of that is the same as the Elder Futhark. But in the AFA, we believe in layering those with the additional Futharks. So if you take the same rune and you take it all the way through those evolutions, it adds some perspective and some meaning. And I think that's the case when we use the Elder Futhark as it is you layer on the meanings of those other runic systems. Because at the end of the day, rune means mystery. The rune isn't the stave. It's not the line design of the rune. It's the mystery that rune represents. And so we're representing those with, some of the different staves from all the different systems, but the essential mystery is the same that's combined in those Elder Futhark runes, and the lore that we've accumulated through the ages on better understanding those. Shay asks, good evening, gentlemen. We're excited to have y'all out to Oklahoma for the Feast of the Einherjar this November. Have either of you been out to Oklahoma to our runestone? I have never been to Oklahoma. I was in Oklahoma one time. I flew in there and then I went to an event in Missouri, but I was in Oklahoma very, very briefly. And then I drove up to Missouri. So I'm excited to go out and see that. And I have never seen the Havener runestone. Trent, what about you?
I've never been to Oklahoma. I've been to Missouri. I imagine it was the same event that you were speaking of. I have not been to Oklahoma yet. No, I've not seen the runestone, but I'm excited for the event for sure.
So, point of fact, it was not the same event. I've been to Missouri exactly twice. I went to one event. The first event I went to, I forget how many years ago now, was a book signing that Brian Wilton was doing. And I got to visit his home in Oklahoma, and he drove me up to this event in Missouri. Last year, I was lucky enough to go to Missouri for the Feast of the Einherjar, and it's going to be the same event that Trent and I will be attending in Oklahoma. And I really do hope we get a chance to go see the Havener runestone. I've heard really, really good things about it over the years. I was able to see, now my words escape me, the runestone that is in Minnesota, and that was a really neat thing to see. It's bothering me. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it will come to me. But I'm excited to see the one in Havener as well. Don asks, how hard was your transition to never go back Asatru from the Christian life with concerned others or your former indoctrination telling you you're going the wrong way? He didn't put a name on it, so we'll start with you first, Trent.
Well, I was raised kind of this weird combination of Southern Baptist and Mormon, sort of back and forth. And then, like I kind of mentioned at the start of the video, I was super liberal, atheist, always skeptic of everything type. And for me, going into Asatru from, nothing is sacred, whatever cringy mindset I had at age 18, I guess. Going from that into Asatru was pretty easy for me in a way, just because I like to believe that I was meant to be Asatru. And so when I heard about it and I was hearing all these experiences of it from my friend, it just pulled me in, and I haven't looked back. But I remember I was still in high school when I went from being an atheist to Asatru. I was a couple months from graduation, and all my friends were kind of taken aback by my my change in outlook, I guess. Not necessarily in a negative way, but just there was a noticeable change, I suppose. And yeah, nothing really, no negative consequences of it, I suppose. Just kind of happened, and I was young enough where I guess a change like that is like, well, whatever, he's a teenager, he's going to change his mind about things. So everybody just went along with it, and here I am.
So my experience is a little bit different. I was raised as generically Protestant as you could possibly be. When I was real little, we went to church, but as any of my conscious memory, really after that, weren't a church going family. When you ask my parents what religion we are, they kind of shrug their shoulders. We're Protestant. And that's the best I got. But I was a real spiritual person as a kid. I remember in junior high, having a real need that way. And my parents didn't have much to offer to me spiritually. So I started reading my Bible, and I read through it several times. And at that time, I didn't really know what options there were for me. I was, I'm not Jewish, so I wouldn't pursue Judaism. I'm not Middle Eastern, so I wouldn't be Islamic. I'm not Asian, so I wouldn't be a Buddhist or a Hindu or Shinto or something. So I thought all we had as white people was Christianity. And I tried that. I tried that really hard for a while. My aunt and her family were Jehovah's Witnesses. So I ended up being part of that and becoming a Jehovah's Witness for a time. I will always really respect the Jehovah's Witnesses, that they try as best as they can to be biblically accurate. They remove all of the paganism that they notice from the scriptures, and they keep it, Middle Eastern, Jesus era Christianity as best they can. And I'm very thankful to that, because that faith is very incompatible with our folk soul, especially if you take away all of the European elements that are part of most of Christianity. If you take all of those out and you keep it to biblical Christianity, it makes the choice much more clear, I think. So I tried that the best I could, but I was a young man, and in the 19 or 20-year-old part of my life, I tried so hard, and I read my Bible over and over again, but one of the other things that contributed was a mainstream Christian thing. This wasn't a Jehovah's Witness thing, but the "What would Jesus do" slogan was a big deal back then. And I started thinking about what the right thing would be to do and what would Jesus do. And I found that very often those didn't intersect, and those weren't the same. And I started, I'd go to the Kingdom Hall, and I'd listen to the elders up there, and they'd say these things that I thought were ridiculous. And my friends in the congregation would, "Amen." And I knew damn well that they didn't believe those things. They'd talk about movies or video games or this activity or hunting or whatever. And we had plans that weekend to do that thing. And they would say amen to it. And I'm like, hold on, you're still coming over, right? Of course they are. And so I decided that I needed to live authentically. I wasn't going to be dishonest. And my hang up, it occurred to me, it wasn't that I felt I was doing something wrong, but I knew it was against the doctrine of the Bible and the doctrine of the church. And so finally I got to a point, this is before I knew Asatru was a thing, where I knew I didn't want to live my life that way, but I also didn't understand that there was another option. So when I broke with Christianity, I very much chose that the God of the universe was on one side, and I was going to go and be on this different side. So weirdly, syncretically, first Asatru event I ever celebrated was a day of remembrance for King Radbod. His story has always stood out to me for those of you who don't know, Radbod was a king of Frisia at the time of the conversion, and he was being pressured by the Franks to convert to Christianity, and he was almost ready to do it. He's, at that point where he's believing everything, and he's believing in the hellfire and the damnation and the Christian God, and he's about to step into the baptismal font, and he asks the priest, he says, where are my ancestors, though? Will I be able to see my ancestors in heaven? And they said, no, your ancestors are burning in hell. And he said, I'd rather burn in hell with my noble ancestors than spend eternity in heaven with a parcel of beggars. And with that, he stepped out and he reaffirmed his Asatru relationship. That meant a lot to me, because at that moment, he thought he was really facing eternal damnation with his ancestors, or the Christian heaven of eternal praising their Jewish God. And that's very much where I felt like I was at that time. So I chose Alsherjargothi. Well, first, I didn't know this was the thing, but I was a very spiritual person, and I knew that our folk had gods before, the Middle Eastern God came to Europe. So I was looking into that, and I thought I was the only one doing this, and I tried to find out the right way to do it. And in Googling that, I found this guy, Stephen McNallen, in the Asatru Folk Assembly. And I've been hooked ever since. My own parents have always been kind of okay with it. Like I said, they were never very religious. My aunt and the Jehovah's Witnesses in my family, I've been disfellowshipped, so they're not allowed to talk with or interact with me. And that's sad, but I understand that choice based on their faith. My parents, I don't know how serious they took it for a long time. It was really special to me. My wife and I got married at Odenshof in 2017, and my father and my stepmother came to our wedding, and it was at midsummer at Odenshof. So they got to be there for a couple of days and see what it is that their son was doing. And it was really special to me, because at that moment it became real to them. They got to see that there were these other people, and everyone took this very seriously, and that their son was a leader in this faith that he's chosen. And I think that's meant something to them ever since then. But that was kind of my experience. I know it was a little bit long-winded. Shovelhead asks, what brought you people to worship these gods? Are y'all military? I've been to war in Iraq and Afghanistan, so I know evil beyond what usual humans can comprehend. Trent, go ahead and take the first swing at this.
Okay, so I was in the military. I was Army National Guard. I didn't get to deploy for combat. I just deployed across the states to help with pulling cars out of inclement weather. Unfortunately, I was infantry, so I was sort of I had that wanting to go to combat mindset, I guess, for a long time. As for what brought me to worship these gods specifically, it's kind of they were the gods of my ancestors. My ancestors being largely Anglo-Saxon, they worshiped Woden, Thunor, and Tu, or Odin, Thor, and Tyr. And so that was pretty much just the original thing that drew me to them. As far as that relates to the military, I felt a really specific closeness to Thor when I was in the infantry. But like I said, my Army career wasn't a whole lot. It was just 3 years of training the whole time, pretty much. So not a whole lot of relation, I guess, between my faith and my brief stint in the service.
So, guys, if you have any questions, we're into our third hour here. If you guys have any more questions, please go ahead and ask those, because we're running down. We have one more question after this. So yeah, if you got questions, go ahead and get them out there. If not, we'll talk to you guys again next week. Shovelhead, on your question. First, thank you for your service. I have not ever been in the military. I told my story of how I got involved in Asatru. Um, it's appealed to me a lot because it's natural. Of the virtues of Asatru are very much life embracing, whereas the Abrahamic faiths are kind of life denying. Um, all the inclinations of a young man's heart, according to the Bible, every inclination of man's heart is upon evil. Well, I don't believe that. I think that the things that are in our heart that drive us come from our folk soul and are very often, in the right context, very good and very noble things. Certainly, being a Jehovah's Witness at the time, anything sexual, anything martial was wrong. And as a young man, no, those things are very important. Standing up for myself and what I believe in is very important. Wanting to engage with women and do that and be a sexually active person was very important. Wanting to have pride in myself and do things to bring pride to myself and my family is very important. One of the biggest things to me was conceiving of the Christian God. He's always talked about as our Father, our Father. If he were a human father and he demanded all the glory for everything and wouldn't allow you to be proud of yourself, we would find that to be abusive and wrong. One of the things I love about Asatru is I want our gods to be proud of us. And I believe that our gods want us to be heroes so that they can be proud of us. And I don't think they're so petty that they need all of the glory. They want us to glorify them, certainly, but they're not made less by me gaining glory. If anything, it makes me more worthy of them taking note of me. And that was very special to me and part of why this became my faith. So the last question we have of the night, unless anything else comes through here. King of Cheese, if you two are willing to answer another question, as a blacksmith, I pray to the Tree Dedanen and Tuatha Dedanen when I forge. What Germanic gods do you suggest I pray to? Trent, go ahead.
There is a specific smith god in the Germanic stories. He was called Voland to the Norse, Wayland to the Anglo-Saxons. And I guess he wasn't a god. He was more an ascended human. But he was a smith, and so that's who I would pray to in that endeavor. And he's a cognate, I'm pretty sure, to what the Celtic god. I think he's Gubnu. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but he's a direct cognate to that Gaelic smith god.
So I just saw the second half of your question. The way it goes up on the side, I can't always see the full question, so I apologize. Absolutely, with Trent on this, Wayland would be who I would, make offering to before I did smithing. Wayland the Smith is our, beyond the veil smithing advocate. So I think that's your best bet. I also have a reminder from Nick, and I think this is important, especially as it's September. Every quarter, the AFA donates a lump sum to help our folk in South Africa. Many of you know about the atrocities that have been committed against our folk in South Africa. White farmers in South Africa have been targeted for having their land taken from them, being robbed, being raped, and being murdered violently. Many of those folks have been impoverished to where they literally sometimes live in dumps, in corrugated steel huts they've been able to cobble together. A lot of them are in a really bad way. So every quarter, the AFA collects donations, and we pay out every quarter to the South Africa Family Relief Project. And we've been doing this for a number of years. I don't pretend it fixes everything over there, but I do know that it makes life better for some people. So if you guys want to contribute to that, our South Africa fund, all of that money goes to the folks over in South Africa, and they're very, very grateful for it. And it helps those people to have enough to eat. Most of our donations, now we've done stuff to farm fencing projects before, but most of our donations end up going to the grocery list for that organization. They've got one of the squatter camps that they deal with and help feed those people. For a long time, baby formula was a big thing they were lacking. Mothers are lacking the nutrients to produce healthy milk for the babies, and formula prices have gone up. So a lot of the money that we send over there ends up going to baby formula. But those people are very, very grateful. Your dollar goes a long way in South Africa. The dollar to rand ratio comes out very advantageous when it comes to groceries, certainly. So any of you guys help, we really, really appreciate that. That's all we've got for questions tonight. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Trent, we really appreciate you being here tonight and talking to us. We'd love to have you back on sometime. All right, guys. Well, thank you for listening to us for the last, I don't know, almost 2.5 hours now. We appreciate you, and I look forward to talking to you guys again next week. Hail the gods, hail the folk, hail the AFA, and remember, victory never sleeps. Good night, guys.